You thought pirates only used cannons and swords? What about furious bees? In the 17th century, boarding a Spanish galleon was basically suicide. But Caribbean corsairs had a secret weapon that made entire crews jump overboard without a single shot fired. They took ordinary clay pots, filled them with live wild bees, and sealed them with wax. When the pirate ship got close, these hive bombs were thrown straight onto the enemy's deck. Imagine tight space, panic, and thousands of furious insects crawling under armor. It was the perfect weapon. Bees didn't damage valuable cargo or gold like fire or cannonballs did, but they instantly demoralized the enemy. The Spanish called it a devil swarm. What would you do for treasure? Write in the comments if you knew about this tactic, and follow BeeVerse for more wild facts about bees. Did you think catapults launched only stones? What about living bees? In the Middle Ages, castle defenders used bees as the perfect biological weapon. When enemies climbed the walls, they didn't pour boiling oil. They dropped entire beehives. Imagine the chaos. Armor was useless, furious swarms stung through every gap, and soldiers panicked and leaped from the battlements. Even the bravest knights fled from these tiny soldiers of BeeVerse. Richard the Lionheart used this trick during the Crusades too, hurling beehives over the walls of enemy cities. It was a weapon no sword could stop. Do you think it's fair to use animals in war? Share your thoughts in the comments and follow BeeVerse for more sting-filled facts. Would you risk your life for a single jar of honey? In the Himalayas, this isn't a hobby. It's a fight for survival. This is the hunt for red honey. It's collected hundreds of meters up a cliff, where one wrong move means the end. And no, these people have no modern protective suits. They rely only on smoke to calm the bees and long bamboo sticks to cut the honeycombs. But Apis laboriosa, the world's largest honeybees, have stingers that pierce even thick clothing. Why take such risks? This honey has hallucinogenic properties. Known as mad honey, collectors will pay hundreds of dollars per gram for it. Sounds like true madness, right? Tell me in the comments, would you try this honey knowing what it takes to harvest it? Subscribe to BeeVerse to uncover more secrets from the world of bees. Imagine this. Tomorrow you wake up and there are no bees left in the world. Sounds small? In reality, it's the beginning of the end. Within a few months, a third of your favorite foods would disappear from store shelves. Coffee, apples, nuts, and even chocolate would become luxuries for the few. Food prices would skyrocket. The global economy would take a hit stronger than any pandemic, because bees do work worth hundreds of billions of dollars every year, for free. Without pollination, wild plants would die. Forests would begin to thin, animals would lose their food, and the ecosystem we've built over thousands of years would collapse like a house of cards. Einstein once said humanity would have only 4 years left after bees disappear. Is that an exaggeration? Maybe. But do we really want to find out? At BeeVerse, we believe the future can still be changed. Follow us to discover how a tiny bee saves your world every single day. You thought catapults only launched stones? Hannibal used something far more terrifying. In 184 BC, Hannibal's fleet faced the superior forces of King Humans. A direct attack meant certain death. Instead of arrows, Hannibal ordered thousands of bees to be sealed inside clay pots. When they smashed onto the enemy's deck, all hell broke loose. The enemy soldiers had no idea how to fight insects. They dropped their weapons and jumped into the sea, trying to escape the stings. That's how tiny bees helped win a massive naval battle. Follow BeeVerse to discover how bees changed history. The British Army lost a battle because of honey. In 1914, elite troops fled in panic, defeated not by Germans, but by billions of furious bees. It happened during the Battle of Tonga. The British expected an easy victory, outnumbering the Germans 8-1. But they forgot about the jungle's most powerful ally. Gunfire shattered wild beehives, and the bees attacked everyone in sight. Soldiers were getting 300 stings per minute. Many dropped their weapons and jumped into the ocean to escape the black clouds swarming over them. This humiliation went down in history as the Battle of the Bees. Even the world's strongest army can be powerless against nature. Which army had the ultimate insect weapon? Hannibal's bees or Tanzania's? Tell me in the comments and follow BeeVerse for more wild facts.
Roman legionaries thought they had found a sweet treasure, but it became their last meal. 67 BC, the army of Pompey the Great was chasing the enemy along the Black Sea. Suddenly, right on the road, hundreds of honeycombs filled with fresh honey. Would you resist that temptation? The soldiers didn't, but they didn't know the local bees had gathered nectar from poisonous rhododendron. Would you risk tasting honey in enemy territory? Tell me in the comments. While you're thinking, the legionaries were already losing consciousness. This was the infamous mad honey. It causes hallucinations and paralysis. The enemy simply returned and slaughtered the helpless army, unable even to lift their swords. That's how bees and honey changed the course of a war. Follow BeeVerse, where history always stings.
Vikings didn't fear death because they believed an endless supply of mead awaited them in Valhalla. This wasn't just a drink. For northern warriors, honey was a sacred gift from the gods and a vital source of strength. But how did they get it in such a harsh climate? In reality, Vikings were skilled beekeepers. They built special straw hives and valued bees above all else. They believed bees were the only creatures capable of traveling to the heavenly realm. From this honey, they brewed their legendary drink. A mix of wild honey and special herbs could push warriors into a berserker state, unstoppable fury in battle. And according to myth, there was even the mead of poetry. Anyone who drank it gained wisdom and the gift of verse. For Vikings, beekeeping was truly a matter of survival and glory. Have you ever tried real traditional mead? Tell me in the comments and follow BeeVerse. You think medieval knights could only be stopped by swords? What about a flying strike force that could slip through even the strongest armor? During medieval sieges, defenders often used so-called bee bombs. When a hive was thrown down and shattered in the middle of attacking troops, chaos exploded instantly. Enraged bees flooded into every gap in the armor, and inside a closed helmet, a knight was trapped with dozens of furious insects. The panic was so intense that even elite units retreated within minutes. And this isn't a legend. Medieval chronicles officially described bees as winged artillery. During the siege of Groningen, for example, bee attacks stopped an entire army. Tiny insects turned out to be more effective than cannons. Who would have thought that a simple apiary could double as a real weapons depot? What other strange weapons from the past would you like to hear about? Tell me in the comments and follow BeeVerse. Did you know that ordinary honey once wiped out a Roman army without a single shot? This was the sweetest trap in history. 67 BC, Pompey's legions are chasing King Mithridates through the mountains of Pontus. Victory for Rome seems certain, until they find hundreds of honeycombs full of fresh, golden honey left right on the road. Hungry soldiers devour it instantly. But this honey was collected from rhododendron flowers, packed with granotoxin, a neurotoxic poison. Within minutes, elite warriors start staggering like drunk men, collapsing from hallucinations. They are completely helpless. That's when King Mithridates returns to strike the legionaries, who can't even lift their swords. This mad honey still exists today in the mountains of Turkey and Nepal. Bees aren't just sweet, they can be the perfect weapon. Would you dare try honey that causes hallucinations? Tell me in the comments and follow BeeVerse. You thought medieval castles were defended only by walls and boiling oil? What about walls that had wings and stingers? Historians have discovered strange built-in niches inside many European fortresses. They weren't for statues or torches. They were hidden bee launch pads. In peaceful times, they provided honey, but during a siege, they became deadly traps. Imagine a knight climbing a siege ladder. He's wrapped in heavy armor, full of tiny ventilation gaps and vision slits. All defenders had to do was push a beehive out of the niche and let it crash right onto the attackers' heads. One furious bee slipping under a visor or into an armpit instantly turned an elite warrior into a panicking target. And pulling it out in the middle of battle was impossible. Knights often fell from great heights, just trying to tear off their helmets. This was real medieval biological warfare. Castles didn't just keep bees, they worked with them. And what other living weapons from the past would you like to hear about next? Tell me in the comments. You think dinosaurs were the coolest creatures 100 million years ago? What about the one that actually outlived them? Meet Melitosfex, the first known bee in history, found perfectly preserved in amber. It looked like a mix between a wasp and a bee, and it was buzzing around while the first flowers bloomed. Under the feet of tyrannosaurs. Without these tiny heroes, the dinosaur world would have been nothing but green ferns and forests. They were the ones who painted our planet with the first colors. Do you think bees would have survived if the asteroid never hit? Drop your theory in the comments. Spartans would never have been so unstoppable without insects. While the world feared their spears, the Spartans themselves relied on a secret kind of bee-powered doping. Imagine a hardened warrior opening a clay jar filled with honey. That was their real fuel. Forget protein bars. Before every battle, each warrior ate a serving of wild honey. It wasn't just a treat, it was their liquid battery. Honey delivered an instant burst of energy, and the bee pollen inside helped their muscles recover faster than any enemy could. But here's the coolest part. They also used bees as living guardians of their borders. If an enemy tried to sneak through the mountain passes, they walked straight into furious swarms, protecting the Spartans' secret trails. So tell me, do you think you could survive on a Spartan warrior's diet, where honey was the main dessert? Type yes or nitrogen monoxide in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to BeeVerse. Vikings didn't just throw axes. Some carried beehives into battle. Norse sagas tell of bee warriors. When they landed on enemy shores, they smashed open woven baskets full of angry bees. The swarm drove defenders crazy. No shield could stop 1,000 stings. There's no hard proof, but the stories appear in multiple sagas. So maybe, just maybe, the Vikings weaponized bees. Imagine facing a shield wall and a buzzing cloud at the same time. Sometimes the smallest warriors are the scariest. Do you think bees could turn the tide of battle? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse if you love wild Viking history.
A nun once kept 20,000 bees inside a cathedral, not outside, inside. Sister Marguerite built hives right into the chapel walls. Bees flew past the altar during Mass. They buzzed around candles, but they never stung the nuns. Locals called it a miracle. For over 100 years, those bees lived in the stone. They became part of the prayer. The French Revolution ended it. But imagine praying to the sound of a living hive. Do you think bees can sense holiness? Comment below, and subscribe to BeeVerse if you'd welcome bees into your church.
In 1622, the first honeybees arrived in America. Then they vanished. Every single hive died. For 16 years, the New World had no bees. Native Americans had never seen them. Colonists couldn't explain it. Disease, bad weather, no one knows. In 1638, a second shipment survived, but the first disappearance remains a mystery, a buzzing ghost story from history. What do you think killed America's first bees? Comment below, and subscribe to BeeVerse for more unsolved mysteries.
A prisoner had no bees, no flowers, no sugar, but he made honey anyway. Jean-Pierre was in a Nazi cell, only bread and water. He scraped mold from the walls. He crumbled old bread. He mixed with water. 4 months, the paste fermented. It turned sweet. He called it prison honey. It kept him alive. After the war, he became a beekeeper. He said, "If you can make honey from nothing, you can survive anything." Could you find sweetness in a prison cell? Comment below. and subscribe to BeeVerse for stories of impossible hope.
Plutarch said Spartans weren't like other Greeks. They were like bees, but he didn't mean it as a compliment. After Lycurgus' reforms, Spartans became bee-like. They followed their kings without question. They swarmed together like insects. For Plutarch, this wasn't praise. It was a warning. Spartans had lost their individuality. They had lost the power to think for themselves. The same symbol we use for industry became a warning about the dangers of absolute obedience. Would you want to live in a hive? Comment below. Subscribe to BeeVerse for more surprising history.
A bloody war was about to begin. Two armies faced each other across a desolate valley. Then a beekeeper stepped forward. His name, Klaus. He carried a covered hive. He walked between the soldiers, right into no man's land. He opened the lid. The bees poured out like a dark cloud of smoke. They stung both sides. Chaos erupted. No one could fight anymore. By the time the swarm settled, the will to battle had vanished. The commanders agreed to negotiate. The war never happened. One man, one hive. Hundreds of lives saved. Would you trust a swarm to stop a war? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse. The British raiding party was winning the fight until they knocked over some beehives. The year was 1780. Loyalist soldiers were plundering farms in North Carolina. A young boy spotted the enemy and warned the patriots. The colonists hid. They watched as the British raided the farm and tipped over a beehive. The furious bees attacked everyone. In the chaos, the patriots killed 8 loyalists. They wounded 12. Not a single patriot died. A swarm of bees had just changed the course of a battle. Legend says, George Washington remarked, "It was the cackling geese that saved Rome, but it was the bees that saved America." Would you fight alongside a swarm? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more forgotten history. George Washington loved honey on his hoe cakes every morning, but he didn't buy it from a store. The first president kept his own bees at Mount Vernon. He used them to pollinate his fruits and vegetables, and he built a secret bee house on his estate. In 1782, Washington ordered a wooden box hive, one of the first in America. Back then, most people still used old-fashioned straw hives. The first president didn't just win a war, he helped revolutionize beekeeping. Would you keep bees in your backyard like George Washington? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more American history. Morgan Freeman didn't just talk about saving bees. He turned his 124-acre ranch into a bee sanctuary. The actor stopped using pesticides. He planted clover and wildflowers. He brought in millions of bees from Arkansas. Freeman even feeds his bees sugar water in his own kitchen. "Bees are the only reason we have food," he said. Hollywood royalty became a beekeeping farmer, a real-life hero for the pollinators. Would you turn your backyard into a bee sanctuary? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more celebrity bee stories. Martha Stewart doesn't just bake with honey. She keeps 300,000 bees at her New York farm. Every year she harvests 600 pounds of honey. She uses it in her recipes. She makes beeswax candles. She even sells her own branded honey. "Beekeeping is the most satisfying hobby," she says. Martha has inspired thousands of fans to start their own hives, a domestic diva and a real-life queen of the bees. Would you start beekeeping if Martha taught you? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more celebrity bee stories.
In 2016, the White House added a new resident, not a pet, but a swarm. Barack Obama became the first president to install a beehive on the South Lawn. The bees pollinated Michelle Obama's famous kitchen garden. The hives produced hundreds of pounds of honey. That honey was served at state dinners. It was even given as gifts to foreign leaders. The bees thrived under presidential protection. Today, the hives still buzz, a living symbol of the White House's commitment to nature. Would you serve White House honey to a king? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more buzzing history.
The lead singer of Metallica found his peace not in music, but in bees. James Hetfield started beekeeping in 2017. He calls his hives heavy metal therapy. "It's the opposite of heavy metal," he said. "It's quiet, methodical, and alive." The rock legend posts photos of his bees. He even sells honey from his own apiary. A hard rocker who kneels before tiny insects. Would you take beekeeping advice from a metal star? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more unexpected bee heroes.
David Beckham traded his soccer cleats for a beekeeper suit. The world-famous athlete keeps hives at his Cotswolds estate. He harvests his own honey. Beckham posts photos of himself inspecting the hives, wearing a white suit, holding honeycomb. He even gifts jars of his honey to celebrity friends. The man who dominated the soccer field now kneels before a swarm. From golden balls to liquid gold. Would you trust Beckham to tend your hives? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more surprising bee heroes.
Brad Pitt has stared down vampires. He's fought in wars. But his toughest challenge, beekeeping. In 2020, Pitt started keeping bees at his LA home. He called it meditative and grounding. He built his own hives. He learned to handle swarms. Now he harvests honey for his family. Pitt also donated to bee conservation groups. A man who has played legends now finds peace in the hum of tiny insects. Even movie stars need bees. Would you take beekeeping advice from Brad Pitt? Comment below. And subscribe to BeeVerse for more surprising celebrity stories. Most talk show hosts give away cars or cash. Ellen DeGeneres gave away beehives. In 2017, she dedicated an entire show to saving the bees. She brought in a beekeeper. She explained colony collapse. Then she surprised her audience. Every single person got a beekeeping kit. A hive, a suit, tools, everything. Ellen even taught them how to harvest honey. You're not just getting a gift, she said. You're becoming part of the solution. Thousands of bees found new homes that day. A talk show host who turned her stage into a swarm. Would you have cheered for a beehive? Comment below. And subscribe to BeeVerse for more feel-good buzz. Captain Kirk has faced Klingons, Romulans, and even God, but his greatest adventure, keeping bees. William Shatner started beekeeping in 2017. He was terrified at first, but the bees became his passion. He installed multiple hives. He harvested honey. He wrote about bees in his book. Every hive has its own personality, he said. The man who went to space now finds wonder in a buzzing box. Even Captain Kirk kneels before the swarm. Would you trust a starship captain with your hives? Comment below, and subscribe to BeeVerse for more bold bee stories. Captain Kirk has faced Klingons, Romulans, and even God, but his greatest adventure, keeping bees. William Shatner started beekeeping in 2017. He was terrified at first, but the bees became his passion. He installed multiple hives. He harvested honey. He wrote about bees in his book. Every hive has its own personality, he said. The man who went to space now finds wonder in a buzzing box. Even Captain Kirk kneels before the swarm. Would you trust a starship captain with your hives? Comment below, and subscribe to BeeVerse for more bold bee stories.
The Roman legions thought they were invincible until they met honey. In 67 BC, local rebels offered the Romans honeycombs filled with toxic wildflower nectar. The soldiers ate the sweet treat, collapsed into hallucinations, and were slaughtered without a fight. Bees, history's tiniest killers. Forget catapults with rocks. In the Middle Ages, defenders threw beehives over castle walls. Imagine, you're in heavy armor, and inside your helmet, a dozen stinging bees. It was chaos. Whole garrisons surrendered in minutes. Medieval warfare with a sting.
November 1914, Tangai, East Africa. The Great War takes a bizarre turn on this tropical coast. British infantrymen push through the dense jungle scrub, rifles ready, expecting a fierce battle with German forces. Suddenly, nature strikes. Thousands of angry wild African honeybees erupt from the trees, attacking everything in sight. Chaos ensues. Soldiers drop their weapons and sprint toward the shoreline to escape the relentless stings. The mission was abandoned. History would forever remember this bizarre conflict as the Battle of the Bees.
The Romans tried to tunnel under the walls of the Misera, but the defenders were smarter. They released thousands of bees into the cramped tunnels. In that tight space, the Romans never stood a chance. This was history's first underground chemical attack by insects.
In 1941, over Sicily, a low-flying fighter jet flew straight through a wild swarm of bees. The insects were sucked into the air intakes, clogging the engine. The pilot was forced to make an emergency landing. Nature had created its own perfect air defense. No gunfire, just a cloud of tiny, furious soldiers. Even today, bee swarms can delay or ground modern aircraft, but this is the one that started the legend.
Pirates jumped overboard in horror, even though their ship hadn't been fired upon. Merchant ships often carried beehive pots on board. When pirates attempted to board, the sailors would simply smash the pots on the enemy's deck. The confined ship became a deadly trap for the outlaws. It was the most reliable defense. You thought Vikings only feared the gods? They feared what was inside these walls. When Vikings raided monasteries, monks often placed beehives at the main gates. The giants in armor became helpless against thousands of stings. It was the one obstacle you couldn't cut through with an axe. The Vikings left empty-handed because they knew. This weapon needed no gunpowder, but it stopped entire armies in their tracks. The Aztecs raised special stingless bees for honey, but for their enemies, they had a different surprise: wild forest wasps. Clay pots filled with these insects were thrown into the faces of invaders, creating a living wall that no one could pass. Aztec warriors believed these were forest spirits protecting them. In reality, it was an early form of biological warfare.
Napoleon didn't expect that his biggest enemy in the forests wouldn't be bullets. Peasants tied beehives above forest paths with thin threads. When Napoleon's army passed by, one careless step and the fury of thousands of bees fell upon the soldiers. No noise, no gunpowder, entire battalions vanished into the woods, and all because Jennifer Garner doesn't just act in movies. She suits up with her kids and tends 7 beehives in her backyard. The actress started beekeeping in 2018. Her children inspired her now. They all wear bee suits together. Garner keeps 7 hives, plus chickens and a vegetable garden. She calls it a fun science experiment, a Hollywood star who turned her backyard into a buzzing classroom. Would you let your kids keep bees? Comment below, and subscribe to BeeVerse for more sweet celebrity stories. Did you know that during World War II, bees saved thousands of lives just as effectively as doctors? In a time when medicine was powerless, honey became a real strategic weapon. Under brutal sieges and with antibiotics in short supply, honey was often the only antiseptic available. Soldiers and civilians applied it directly to wounds to stop infection and gangrene. And when food supplies collapsed, this liquid gold was sometimes the only source of energy, keeping people alive. Bees helped humanity survive one of the darkest chapters in history. It's proof of nature's incredible power. Subscribe to BeeVerse, where we uncover the wildest secrets from the world of bees.
Forget bullets and poison gas. In the trenches of World War I, there was a weapon no gas mask could stop, and it had wings. November 1914. The Battle of Tonga. A massive British force lands on the coast expecting an easy victory. But instead of enemy soldiers, they're met by millions of furious bees. German defenders had turned beehives into biological landmines. Hidden wires disturbed the hives as British troops advanced, and suddenly the sky turned black. Soldiers dropped their rifles and ran for the ocean, trying to escape thousands of stings. One British signalman reportedly suffered more than 300 stings and somehow survived. The battle later became known as the Battle of the Bees. It remains one of the only moments in history where insects helped force an entire army to retreat. So what do you think? Genius strategy or cruel trap? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe to BeeVerse for the wildest true stories about bees. In 1719, a German priest announced a wild discovery: a library made entirely of beeswax. The pages were wax, the covers were honeycomb. He claimed it was ancient pre-Romo. Scholars flocked to see it. For years, nobody questioned him. Then after his death, the truth came out. He'd carved every single page himself, a complete forgery. But the hoax worked because people wanted it to be real. They wanted bees to hold secret knowledge. A library of wax, fake, but unforgettable. Do you think bees hide secrets we've yet to find? Comment below. And subscribe to BeeVerse if you love weird history.
In April 1986, the world changed forever when the Chernobyl nuclear plant exploded, casting a dark shadow over the land. As the sky turned a haunting glow, everyone fled the zone in terror, leaving everything they knew behind. But amidst the chaos, one man stayed behind. His name was Alexei Koval, a man with a singular mission. 30,000 people abandoned their homes, leaving the exclusion zone to become a silent land of ghosts. But Alexei refused to run. He couldn't leave his family, 50 million bees that depended on him for their very survival. For one grueling month, he lived completely alone in a landscape of eerie silence and invisible, deadly radiation. Day after day, he hand-fed his bees sugar syrup, desperate to give them the strength to fight the creeping poison. He breathed the poisoned air every single day, ignoring the grave risk to his own life for the sake of his hives. When the time finally came to leave, the toll was heavy. Out of his entire apiary, only 3 hives survived. But he didn't leave them behind. He carried those precious survivors out of the dead zone with his own hands. Today, their descendants thrive 100 kilometers away, serving as a living legacy of one man's courage. It is a tiny miracle born from stubborn, unbreakable love. Would you risk your life for a swarm of bees? Tell us in the comments and subscribe to BeeVerse if you believe every bee deserves a hero.
Becoming a Spartan warrior was brutal, but one part sounds delicious. For 30 days, they ate only honey. Young men trained in the Tagatos Mountains. They hunted wild game. They gathered plants. And they ate mountain honey, nothing else. It was a test of endurance, of self-discipline. Those who succeeded returned as warriors. Those who failed never came back. Honey wasn't just a sweetener, it was a survival tool. The sweet path to becoming a Spartan warrior ran through a jar of honey. Could you survive on honey alone for a month? Comment below. And subscribe to BeeVerse for more warrior history. Sparta's most feared goddess demanded blood, but her temple was shaped like a beehive. The sanctuary of Artemis Orthia was brutal. Young Spartans were flogged until they bled to honor the goddess. But excavators found something unexpected. The temple's design echoed a beehive. Across Greece, bees were sacred to Artemis. She was goddess of the hunt, of wild nature, of childbirth in Sparta. This fierce huntress ruled over life, death, and the buzz of her sacred insects, bees in a temple of blood. Would you have dared to enter? Comment below. Subscribe to BeeVerse for more dark history.
A castle was under siege. The attackers had ladders, arrows, and trebuchets. But the defenders had something worse. Beehives launched from catapults. The year was 1287. The castle of Horst in Belgium was outnumbered. They ran out of stones. So they gathered every beehive in the village. They loaded the clay pots into catapults. They launched them over the walls. The pots shattered on the enemy ranks. Thousands of furious bees swarmed the army. Horses bucked. Knights tore off their helmets. The attack collapsed. The siege was lifted. Local chronicles called it the miracle of the bees, a genius defense, and a legend that still stings. Would you launch a beehive at your enemy? Comment below, and subscribe to BeeVerse for more wild medieval tactics. A Roman legion was on the verge of victory. Then a swarm of bees rose from a ruined farmhouse. The year was 127 BC. Roman soldiers were marching through Lyssa. A soldier kicked over an abandoned beehive. Thousands of furious bees exploded. Horses bolted. Men threw down their shields. In the chaos, local fighters ambushed them. The legion was routed, defeated not by an army, but by insects. Roman historians recorded it with shame. We were conquered by bees. The weirdest defeat in Roman history. What would you fear more, a sword or a swarm? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more bizarre history.
A famous actor gave his friend a terrifying wedding gift, 10 pounds of buzzing bees. Samuel L. Jackson overheard Scarlett Johansson worrying about honeybees, so he sent his assistant to buy a box of live bees. He handed her a full beekeeping suit and a lifetime subscription to the American Beekeeping Journal. I wanted them to start their own hive, he said. The couple kept the bees for years. Jackson didn't just give a gift, he helped save the bees. Would you accept 10 pounds of bees as a wedding present? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more incredible celebrity stories. A famous actor gave his friend a terrifying wedding gift, 10 pounds of buzzing bees. Samuel L. Jackson overheard Scarlett Johansson worrying about honeybees, so he sent his assistant to buy a box of live bees. He handed her a full beekeeping suit and a lifetime subscription to the American Beekeeping Journal. I wanted them to start their own hive, he said. The couple kept the bees for years. Jackson didn't just give a gift, he helped save the bees. Would you accept 10 pounds of bees as a wedding present? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more incredible celebrity stories.
Leonardo DiCaprio didn't just talk about saving the planet. He invested millions in a bee startup. The company is called BeeHero. It builds smart sensors that watch over hives, like tiny hotels for bees. DiCaprio also funds bee research through his Earth Alliance Foundation. Bees are the foundation of our food system, he said. If they disappear, we disappear. The actor's green investments prove he's not just a movie star. He's a real-life protector of the pollinators. Would you invest in smart hives? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more celebrity bee heroes.
Before he was king, Charles was a beekeeper. He started at age 30. He still tends his hives today on his Highgrove estate. Charles harvests organic honey, he sells it for charity, and he talks to his bees. I talk to my bees, he once said. They're extraordinary creatures. During the pandemic, beekeeping was his therapy, a king who kneels before his hives. Would you trust your king to keep bees? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more royal bee stories.
Jimmy Fallon didn't plan to keep bees. Then a swarm landed on his microphone. It was 2015, during an outdoor taping of The Tonight Show. Bees covered the stage. Instead of running, Fallon made jokes. A beekeeper in the audience helped remove the swarm, but Fallon couldn't forget them, so he installed hives at his home. Now he gives honey to his celebrity guests. A late-night accident turned into a lifelong hobby. Would you start beekeeping after a swarm lands on you? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more buzzing celebrity stories.
Oprah Winfrey has a 40-acre farm in Maui. She grows lavender, she raises chickens, and she keeps her own beehives. She calls the honey liquid gold. Oprah harvesting honey, wearing a full suit, laughing as bees buzz around her. There's something magical about it, she says. Bees teach you patience. She gives jars of her Maui honey to friends and guests. Even Oprah bows to the bees. Would you try Oprah's private honey? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more sweet celebrity stories.
Sting didn't just buy a villa in Tuscany. He turned 900 acres into a bee sanctuary. The former police frontman banned pesticides. He planted wildflowers. He installed dozens of beehives. The estate produces its own honey, liquid gold from the Tuscan sun, he says. Beekeeping taught him patience, respect for nature. Sting even wrote a song inspired by his bees. Rock royalty now protects the swarm. Would you trust a rock star to save the bees? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more sweet celebrity stories. Neil Young has written songs about nature. Now he's protecting it, one hive at a time. His California ranch is an organic paradise. No pesticides, only wildflowers. Young keeps multiple beehives. He harvests honey for his family. Bees are the canary in the coal mine, he says. If they're in trouble, we're in trouble. A rock icon who traded amplifiers for the hum of a healthy hive. Would you listen to a song about bees from Neil Young? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more sweet stories. From shape of you to the shape of a hive. Ed Sheeran traded his guitar for a bee suit and started making his own honey. The pop superstar installed beehives at his 16-acre estate called Sheeranville. He already had greenhouses, orchards, goats, and chickens. Bees were the next step. Sheeran helped build the hives himself. He planted flowers across his land to feed his colonies. Beekeeping, he says, is humbling. A peaceful escape from the chaos of fame. From pop stardom to backyard farmer, Ed Sheeran found his sweet spot. Would you buy Ed Sheeran's honey at a concert? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more celebrity bee stories.
Beyoncé calls her fans the Bayhive, but she didn't stop there. She installed real beehives at her LA estate. In 2018, she and Jay-Z added hives to their Bel Air mansion. They hired a professional beekeeper to tend them. The honey goes into family meals, beauty treatments. They even gave jars as wedding favors. Beyoncé also supports bee conservation charities, a pop icon whose real-life hive matches her loyal fan base. From formation to formation of a swarm, the queen bee keeps it real. Would you want a jar of Beyoncé's private honey? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more sweet celebrity stories. Even Richard the Lionheart knew, bees are a force to be reckoned with. During the Siege of Acre, crusaders launched beehives directly into the enemy ranks. One single hive could break up an entire battalion better than any cavalry charge. Who knew the fate of the Holy Land depended on tiny striped warriors? In the jungles of Vietnam, traps weren't just made of bamboo. Guerrillas learned to carry wild beehives to patrol trails. One well-placed shot into a hive and an entire squad was neutralized without a single bullet. Bees were the most unpredictable ally in the forest.
The Incas didn't have guns, but they had millions of striped warriors. During attacks on the Spanish, they placed beehives disguised as sacks of gold along the walls. The conquistadors rushed for the treasure, broke the hives, and found themselves trapped. It's the only battle in history where gold stung back. The ancient Chinese didn't just invent gunpowder. They also invented bee artillery. During sieges, defenders would load special containers filled with live beehives into catapults and launch them into the enemy camp. Once the containers broke open, thousands of furious bees would cause chaos among the soldiers. No shield could protect against that. And that's why you thought Vikings only feared the gods? They feared what was inside these walls. When Vikings raided monasteries, monks often placed beehives at the main gates. The giants in armor became helpless against thousands of stings. It was the one obstacle you couldn't cut through with an axe. The Vikings left empty-handed because they knew. Imagine a machine built for war a knight in full-plate armor, seemingly unstoppable and feared by all. But during French castle sieges, defenders used a secret weapon that didn't involve swords or arrows. They used nature's most aggressive soldiers, bees. When the hives shattered on the bridge, thousands of angry bees swarmed the advancing army. The bees found their way into the narrow breathing slits and the gaps between the steel plates. Trapped in their own iron suits, the knights became helpless, flailing like children. They desperately tried to unbuckle their heavy armor while being stung repeatedly. Their only escape was a humiliating plunge into the filthy, muddy castle moat. It remains one of the most embarrassing defeats in history. Sometimes, the smallest buzz is louder than a war cry. Meet the tiniest spies in history. According to a modern myth, the ancients used bees as secret messengers during sieges. Tiny signals were attached to their legs, and the bees would ignore enemy arrows and guards to return unwittingly to their hives. Could the enemy intercept a tiny, buzzing spy? No one would ever suspect a simple bee. Jason Statham has fought sharks, criminals, and spies. But his toughest role? Playing a beekeeper, and actually becoming one. For his movie The Beekeeper, Statham learned real beekeeping, smoking hives, pulling comb, handling thousands of live insects. Director David Ayer said, "That's real. The bees are real." He learned how to do all of that. Statham embraced the zen of beekeeping. He never got stung. The crew? They learned that bees attack black clothing. They think it's a bear, a tough guy who found peace in the hum of a hive. Would you trust Jason Statham with your bees? Comment below. And subscribe to BeeVerse for more surprising celebrity stories.
In 2009, she installed the first White House beehive. The bees produced 225 pounds of honey per year, served at state dinners and given to kings. 70,000 bees at their peak. A first lady who brought the pollinators to the table. Subscribe to BeeVerse for more. The Red Hot Chili Peppers bassist is famous for playing shirtless, but his latest passion requires full protective gear: beekeeping. In 2015, Flea began keeping his own hives. Today he tends 3 hives with over 200,000 bees. He posts photos of his bees. He calls beekeeping meditative. It helps him stay grounded. The man who helped define 90s rock now finds his rhythm in the hum of a healthy hive. Would you trust a rock star with 200,000 bees? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more sweet celebrity stories.
David Beckham has won Champions Leagues, captained England, and built a global brand. But his sweetest achievement? A £12 million honey business. During lockdown, the soccer legend discovered beekeeping. What started as a hobby became a passion. Today, he tends 9 hives at his Cotswolds estate. He produces his own organic honey. Beckham bonded with King Charles over their love of bees. He even gifted the king a jar of his honey. His Netflix documentary opens with him in full beekeeper gear, gently harvesting honey from his hives. From the pitch to the hive, Beckham found his sweet spot. Would you buy David Beckham's honey? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more sweet celebrity stories.
Before he was CR7, before the Ballon d'Ors, for the global fame, Cristiano Ronaldo was called Abel Hinha, the Little Bee. As a child in Madeira, he earned the nickname for his relentless energy. He buzzed around defenders. Never stopped chasing the ball. The name stuck for years. Ronaldo later gave it to his Yorkshire Terrier. The boy once called a tiny buzzing insect, grew up to become one of the greatest footballers of all time. From Little Bee to global icon, the sting never faded. Did you know Ronaldo was called a bee? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more surprising football stories? Before Tottenham, before Premier League glory, Sun Heung-min had a nickname, the Beekeeper. In Germany, Dortmund wore yellow and black. They were the bumblebees, and Sun kept swatting them. 5 goals in 6 matches against Dortmund. He broke their winning streaks, terrified their defense. Korean fans called him the Beekeeper. He always knew how to handle the swarm. When Tottenham faced Dortmund years later, Sun did it again. The Beekeeper never forgot his favorite prey. Did you know Sun was called the Beekeeper? Comment below. Subscribe to BeeVerse for more football buzz. Before he was a World Cup winner, Gianluigi Buffon had a nickname, the Bee. At just 17 years old, the Italian goalkeeper earned it for his incredible reflexes. He darted across the goal line, never still, always buzzing. In Italy, goalkeepers aren't always celebrated, but Buffon's nickname stuck. For 25 years, he kept stinging opposition forwards, denying goals, breaking spirits. One of the greatest goalkeepers in history, and he buzzed like a bee. Did you know Buffon was called the Bee? Comment below, and subscribe to BeeVerse for more football buzz. Brentford FC didn't choose their nickname, it was given to them by accident over 130 years ago. In 1895, students from Borough Road College came to support their friend Joe Gettins. They shouted their college war cry, "Buck up, Bees!" The press misheard it as Buck Up Bees, and the name stuck. The club eventually embraced it. They added a bee to their badge. They wore stripes like the insect itself, a nickname born from a misheard chant. And now they're the Bees forever. Would you cheer for a team called the Bees? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more buzzing football history.
Opponents didn't just chase Daniel James, they swarmed him like bees round honey. His paid teacher coined the phrase beehive football. As soon as Danny got the ball, 6 or 7 players would chase him. The East Riding County manager said they were like bees round honey trying to catch him up. James was too fast. They never caught him. A player so quick that the only way to stop him was to surround him. And even that didn't always work. Would you want to chase Daniel James like a bee? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more buzzing football stories.
College football has some weird trophies, but the Beehive boot is arguably the strangest, a giant boot awarded to the best team in Utah. The trophy was first awarded in 1971. It goes to the school that has the best record against the other two. In 2021, BYU brought the boot back to Provo. It had been sitting in Salt Lake City for years. What makes it strange? The trophy isn't shiny or new. It's an old boot, but for Utah football fans, it's a symbol of in-state supremacy, a giant boot, a nickname from a bee, and a rivalry that's been buzzing for 5 decades. Would you want to win an old boot? Comment below, and subscribe to BeeVerse for more strange sports stories.
A football coach once told his team, "You don't have to be giants. Just sting like bees." The year was 2013. A small team in Brazil was about to be relegated. Their coach gave a speech they never forgot. "Bees are small," he said, "but they work together. They never give up. And when they sting, it hurts." The team adopted the motto, "Sting like bees." They swarmed opponents. They attacked in waves. They never stopped. They won 7 of their last 10 games. Against all odds, they stayed up. The local newspaper called them the Swarm. Sometimes you don't need to be the biggest, just the most determined. Could you sting like a bee? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more stories of underdog triumph.
A football match was tied 1-1 in the 78th minute. Then the Bees took over. Players dropped to the ground. Referees ran for cover. Cameramen ducked for safety. It happened in Tanzania. A swarm invaded the stadium. Some blamed the weather. Others said vibrations from the game disturbed them. The Bees lingered for a few minutes. When play resumed, City FC Abuja scored a late winner. The swarm had become an unlikely 12th man. Football and bees, a surprisingly common combination. Would you keep playing with bees on the pitch? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more buzzing sports stories. A football match was tied 1-1 in the 78th minute. Then a swarm of bees invaded the pitch. Players, referees, ball boys, even the cameramen all threw themselves flat on the ground. Substitutes hid under benches. Spectators stayed calm. Nobody got stung. Some blamed the weather. Others said the vibrations from the game disturbed the bees. The swarm moved on after a few minutes. City FC Abuja scored a late winner. Fans online joked, "Nature doesn't care about your football schedule. Football's strangest tactic, playing dead to survive. Would you have stayed calm or run for cover?" Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more buzzing sports stories. A British army of 8,000 soldiers was defeated by just 1,000 Germans. But the real enemy wasn't the enemy, it was the bees. November 1914, East Africa. British troops charged through the jungle and disturbed thousands of wild bees. Soldiers dropped their rifles. They ran in panic. The German commander seized the moment. His smaller force counterattacked and won. The battle is still remembered as the Battle of the Bees. Would you have charged into a jungle full of bees? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more incredible battle stories. Before guns, before cannons, the Zulu army had a secret weapon. Bees. Warriors captured wild swarms. They released them toward enemy lines. Chaos followed. Shields couldn't stop the sting. Spears couldn't fight the swarm. The enemy ran. The Zulu advanced. Psychological warfare, ancient style. Would you face a swarm in battle? Comment below and subscribe to BeeVerse for more Wild War history.
You think bees in castle walls were scary? How about a rain of scorpions dropping right onto your head? One of my viewers reminded me of this nightmare. And yes, it's a real historical event. Imagine this. The year is 198 AD. The mighty army of Roman Emperor Septimius Severus is storming the desert city of Hatra. The Romans have the best armor, the best siege weapons. But the defenders prepared something very different. Instead of stones, they load their catapults with clay pots. Inside each one, hundreds of furious venomous scorpions. When the pots smash against shields or helmets, they burst open, sending live weapons crawling straight into the legionaries' armor. Panic was instant. Warriors who didn't fear swords suddenly dropped their weapons, desperately trying to tear off their gear as the biting death swarmed under their plates. Hatra held strong, and the undefeated Septimius Severus was forced to retreat. Biological weapons of the past were far more inventive than we imagine. What living weapon should I cover next? Comment, ants or snakes, and I'll make a new episode. BeeVerse, where history comes alive.
Radiation was supposed to wipe out every living thing there. But the bees of Chernobyl didn't just survive, they became stronger. After the disaster at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, scientists expected to find a barren wasteland. Instead, they discovered beehives thriving right inside the exclusion zone. It turned out these bees activated a unique radioprotective shield. Their DNA began repairing itself faster than radiation could damage it. In just a few years, they upgraded their evolution, a process that normally takes thousands of years. Even more surprising, the honey they produced was cleaner than anyone imagined. Their bodies acted like natural filters, blocking heavy metals and cesium from entering the hive. This discovery could one day help humans survive long-term space travel to Mars. What do you think? Could people ever learn this kind of regeneration? Tell us in the comments, and follow BeeVerse here. Science gets wild.
Before there were beekeepers, there was a Greek god named Aristeus. He didn't just keep bees, he invented the art of beekeeping. Aristeus was the son of Apollo and a nymph named Cyrene. His name means the best. He taught humanity how to cultivate bees, olives, and vines. He was a protector of herdsmen and hunters. But Aristeus once made a terrible mistake. He caused the death of Eurydice, the wife of the musician Orpheus. As punishment, all his bees died. To bring them back, he had to sacrifice to the spirit of the woman he'd wronged. From the carcass of an ox, a new swarm of bees miraculously emerged. This was called eugonia, the belief that bees could be born from the decaying flesh of animals. It was a myth that lasted for centuries. The God who gave us beekeeping also learned a hard lesson. Even the best can make mistakes, but nature always finds a way to bring back the bees. Over 1,000 years ago, a monk in Germany wrote a prayer to bless bees. It wasn't in Latin, the language of the church. It was in Old High German, the language of the people. And it was meant to be carried as an amulet, placed near the hives to keep the bees safe. The prayer begins. Christ, the bee swarm is out here. Now fly, you my animal. Come. In the Lord's peace, in God's protection, come home in good health. Then it commands the swarm. Sit, bee. Don't fly into the woods. Neither should you slip away from me. Sit completely still. Do God's will. This 1,000-year-old prayer, the Lorsch Bee Blessing, shows how deeply people have always cared for bees. They were not just insects. They were creatures of God, worthy of a blessing. 1,000 years later, we still pray for the bees. We just don't always put it in writing. Before there was Big Brother, there was the beehive. For thousands of years, philosophers have compared human society to a colony of bees. Aristotle and Plato used bees to explore the nature of the state. Virgil compared the Roman Empire to a beehive. In the 1700s, Bernard Mandeville wrote The Fable of the Bees, arguing that private vices could lead to public benefits. His book influenced Adam Smith and John Maynard Keynes. Shakespeare used bee imagery in Henry V. Tolstoy compared human society to a beehive in War and Peace. Even Karl Marx saw the hive as a model for communist society. The beehive has represented monarchy, democracy, industry, and exploitation. It's a symbol that's been buzzing through politics for over 2,000 years. A tiny insect and a metaphor for everything. In 1653, workers digging in a church in France uncovered a tomb. Inside were the remains of a king who had died 1,200 years earlier. His name was Childeric I, founder of the Merovingian dynasty. Scattered across his body were 300 golden bees. They had been sewn onto his royal cloak, each one crafted from pure gold. These bees were symbols of immortality and resurrection, the same symbols that had appeared in ancient Egypt. And centuries later, a French emperor would remember them. When Napoleon Bonaparte crowned himself in 1804, he chose the golden bee as his emblem. He had the bees sewn onto his coronation robes, connecting his empire to the ancient kings of France. Golden bees buried with a king, reborn with an emperor. A tiny insect that refused to stay in the ground. Royal palaces had secret masters, and they weren't human. Bees ruled Europe longer than any monarch. In the Middle Ages, no coronation happened without bees. Their wax became candles for anointing. Their honey went into holy oils. Even the royal scepter was decorated with golden bees. But the strangest part? People were terrified to upset them. Before a coronation, a special servant came to the palace hives. He whispered, "Today your honey will anoint the king. Don't leave us." They believed that if bees got angry, the kingdom would fall. Today we build skyscrapers and fly to space. But the Middle Ages knew, you're not a king. You're just someone who depends on a tiny winged neighbor. Do you think we should still listen to bees? Comment below. And subscribe to BeeVerse if you believe even kings bowed to nature.
What would you do if tomorrow you were dropped 10 kilometers away from home without a phone, compass, map, or even being able to ask for directions? You'd be lost, right? Now imagine a bee, a tiny insect with a brain the size of a poppy seed. Every day she flies up to 10 kilometers away, visits thousands of flowers, and returns home. She does this dozens of times a day, in any weather, without a single mistake. Out today, we're revealing the secret of nature's greatest navigator. Part 1. The Celestial Compass. Reading the sky like a pro. The primary tool in a bee's navigation toolkit is the sun. Bees use the sun's position as a compass. They orient themselves and maintain a consistent flight direction. But here's where it gets really interesting. Bees don't need to see the sun directly to know where it is. When bees find themselves in unfamiliar territory, they fly in exploratory loops in different directions and over different distances, centered on their starting point. Scientists have discovered that these flights aren't random. They're guided by an internal compass that constantly tracks the sun's position, seeing the invisible polarized light vision. What happens on cloudy days when the sun is hidden behind thick clouds? This is where bees have an ability humans can only dream of. Bees can see polarized light, something completely invisible to the human eye. The sky scatters sunlight in a particular pattern called polarized light. This pattern changes depending on where the sun is, even when hidden. Bees have specialized cells in their eyes that detect this pattern to determine the sun's exact position. Recent research from the University of Constance has revealed something even more remarkable. The upper region of a bee's compound eye contains a special group of facets. These facets are less sensitive to light, preventing blindness when looking at the bright sky, but perfectly designed to detect large-scale polarization patterns. Dr. James Foster, who led this study, explains it beautifully. While they see the rest of the world in more detail, bees see the sky more like a watercolor painting. Adjacent brushstrokes blend into each other and details are hidden. But this is exactly what makes this part of the eye particularly good at detecting large-scale polarization patterns in the sky. This means that even on completely overcast days, when we humans would be completely disoriented, bees can still navigate with confidence. They simply blend out disruptions like clouds or branches overhead and focus on the big picture. The time-compensated compass. Here's another mind-bending fact. The sun moves across the sky throughout the day. If a bee memorized a flight direction at 9 a.m. and tried to use the same sun angle at 3 p.m., she'd fly in the wrong direction. So bees have evolved what scientists call a time-compensated compass. They have an internal biological clock that tells them what time it is, and they adjust their bearing relative to the sun accordingly. This is similar to how ancient mariners used the sun together with precise timekeeping to navigate the oceans. Some insects take this to an extreme level. Monarch butterflies, for example, maintain a fixed bearing for months during their migration, constantly adjusting for the sun's movement. Part 2. The odometer measuring distance with eyes, not legs. The great debate, energy versus vision. For decades, scientists argued about how bees measured the distance they've flown. One theory proposed that bees estimate distance by how much energy they expend, essentially a biological fuel gauge. The other suggested that distance is measured visually, by watching the world flow past their eyes. The debate was settled in the year 2000 through a brilliantly simple experiment. The tunnel experiment. Biologist Mandian Srinivasan and his team at the Australian National University designed an experiment that took advantage of a well-known optical illusion. At a given speed, travel seems slower if landmarks are far away, for instance. From cruising altitude, a plane doesn't seem to be flying as fast as it would if it was skimming a few feet above the ground. The researchers trained bees to fly through a narrow tunnel that was only 11 centimeters wide. The walls of this tunnel were painted with a complex pattern of squares. Here's the trick. Because the patterned walls were so close to the bees, the visual flow they experienced was much faster than what they'd normally see when flying over open countryside. The bees were completely fooled. When they returned to the hive after flying through just 6 meters of tunnel, they performed a waggle dance indicating a food source 200 meters away. They thought they'd flown more than 30 times farther than they actually had. This experiment proved definitively that the honeybee's odometer is visually driven. Bees measure distance by integrating the motion of the visual world across their eyes, what scientists call optic flow. Every tree, every bush, every blade of grass they pass contributes to their internal distance reading. How the odometer works. The bee's eye captures the movement of the environment as she flies. The faster the image moves across her retina, the faster she perceives herself to be moving. By integrating this motion over time, she can calculate exactly how far she's traveled. This system is remarkably accurate. Bees can communicate distances with precision that would be the envy of any human navigator. And it works whether they're flying fast or slow, with the wind or against it. The visual odometer automatically accounts for all these variables. Part 3. Landmark navigation, reading the landscape. The mental map. While the sun compass and odometer tell bees which direction to fly and how far to go, they also need to know where they are in relation to familiar places. This is where landmarks come in. For decades, scientists debated whether bees create something like a mental map of their environment. Early research was cautious about attributing such complex cognitive abilities to insects, but mounting evidence suggests that bees do indeed form sophisticated spatial memories. Dr. Randolph Menzel, one of the world's leading experts on bee navigation, explains, "Here we show that honeybees use a navigation memory, a kind of mental map of the area that they know, to guide their search flights when they look for their hive. Starting in a new unexplored area, linear landmarks, the highways of the sky. Recent research has revealed that bees pay special attention to certain types of landmarks. Just like the first human pilots who navigated by following roads and railways, bees use linear landscape elements as their aerial highways." In a series of experiments conducted between 2009 and 2011, Menzel and his team caught 50 experienced forager honeybees and attached tiny radar transponders to their backs. These transponders weighed only 10.5 milligrams, light enough that the bees could fly normally. The researchers released these bees in a test area too far from their home hives to be familiar. The most notable landmarks in this area were 2 parallel irrigation channels running northeast to southwest. Using radar that could detect the transponders up to 900 meters away, the team tracked each bee's flight path for between 20 minutes and 3 hours. The results were striking. The bees spent a disproportionate amount of time flying alongside the irrigation channels, even when they were more than 30 meters away, the maximum distance from which honeybees can see such landscape elements. The channels continued to guide their exploratory flights. This implies that the bees kept these landmarks in their memory for prolonged periods, using them as guides even when they couldn't directly see them, matching memories to new places. Here's what makes this truly remarkable. The bees came from 5 different home areas, each with different patterns of linear landmarks. When the researchers analyzed the flight patterns using machine learning algorithms, they found something fascinating. Bees from home areas that had similar landmark layouts to the test area spent the most time flying alongside the irrigation channels. Bees from dissimilar home areas paid less attention to these features. The bees were trying to match what they saw in the new area to the mental map they'd formed of their home territory. Our data show that similarities and differences in the layout of the linear landscape elements between their home area and the new area are used by the bees to explore where their hive might be, Menzel concluded. This isn't just simple stimulus-response behavior, it's genuine navigation comparing current sensory input to stored memories and using that comparison to guide movement. Perhaps the most famous aspect of bee navigation is their ability to share directions with each other. When a scout bee finds a rich source of nectar, she returns to the hive and performs a remarkable behavior, the waggle dance. This discovery earned Carl von Frisch a Nobel Prize in 1973, and decades later, scientists are still uncovering new layers of complexity. The waggle dance consists of multiple rounds, each divided into a straight waggle run and a curved return run. During the straight run, the bee waggles her body from side to side while moving forward. The duration of this waggle run encodes the distance. The direction is encoded in the angle of the waggle run relative to gravity on the vertical honeycomb. This angle corresponds to the angle between the direction to the food source and the sun's azimuth in the sky outside. So a bee, dancing at a 45-degree angle to the left of vertical, is telling her nestmates fly 45 degrees to the left of the sun's current position. But here's the really impressive part. The bees watching the dance don't just get a rough idea of where to go. Recent research using harmonic radar tracking has shown that recruits search with remarkable precision, actually more precisely than you'd expect from the variability in the dances themselves. A 2025 study found that recruits search more precisely than the distribution of vector endpoints encoded in the dancer's waggle runs would predict. Researchers suggest follower bees may average information, perhaps as many as 8 to home in on the exact location. This means the bees are not just passively receiving information, they're actively processing it, filtering out noise, and extracting the most accurate signal possible. The same study revealed that the search pattern of recruits depends on the landscape structure. Bees don't just fly blindly to the coordinates, they integrate dance information with their own knowledge of the landscape, searching in areas that make sense based on what they already know. This is evidence of a sophisticated cognitive process that goes far beyond simple stimulus-response behavior. For years, one of the most heated debates in insect navigation research centered on whether bees possess cognitive maps, internal representations of spatial relationships that allow for flexible navigation strategies like shortcutting. Some researchers argued that simpler explanations could account for all observed bee behavior. Perhaps bees just follow routes based on memorized sequences of landmarks, rather than understanding the overall layout of the terrain. But as evidence has accumulated, the case for mental maps in bees has grown stronger. Menzel and his colleague Hugh Gregers have argued that bees do indeed possess something best described as a mental or cognitive map. They write, in our opinion, spatial, temporal relations of landmarks are stored in a mental map in such a way that behavioral routines such as expectation and planning are possible. Importantly, they caution that we shouldn't assume this map works like human conscious experience. They view the mental map of bees as an action memory of spatial relations, rather than a sensory representation like what we experience. According to this view, the bee's navigational memory has two key components. First, there's the relational representation of landmarks, an understanding of how different features in the environment are arranged relative to each other. Second, there's the meaning of specific locations to the animal, which places are worth returning to and why. This framework helps explain how bees can perform such flexible behaviors. When a bee is displaced to an unfamiliar area, she doesn't just wander randomly, she systematically explores, comparing what she sees to what she remembers, and using any similarities to guide her search for home. Bees aren't born with fully developed navigation skills. Young bees must learn to navigate through practice flights, much like young birds learning to fly. Using harmonic radar to track individual bees, researchers have discovered that these training flights follow a distinct pattern. Bees start with short, slow flights near the hive, then progressively fly longer distances at faster speeds as they gain experience. During these practice sessions, bees are building their mental map, memorizing landmarks, and learning the relationship between visual flow and actual distance. Experience matters enormously in bee navigation. Experienced foragers navigate more efficiently, make fewer errors, and find their way home faster. They've built up a rich mental database of landmarks, routes, and spatial relationships that they can draw on whenever they venture out. This is why displacing a bee to an unfamiliar area is so disorienting. She has to rely on more general strategies, like following linear landmarks and searching systematically until she finds something that matches her stored memories. The bee's navigation system isn't just fascinating from a biological perspective, it's also inspiring new technologies. Engineers and computer scientists are studying bee navigation to develop better autonomous systems. Dr. James Forster points out that autonomous vehicles could also benefit from this strategy for navigation. Cameras pointed at the sky could serve as a kind of backup compass if GPS and magnetic signals are unreliable or fail. Because bees accomplish their navigational feats with such a small nervous system, artificial bee eyes could provide an inexpensive way to supplement other autonomous navigation systems. Researchers like Euripides G. Kinnears are working to understand the computational principles underlying the insect's celestial compass, with the goal of creating insect-inspired navigation systems. These systems would be particularly valuable in environments where GPS is unavailable underground, underwater, on other planets, or in areas with heavy electronic interference. By mimicking the bee's ability to navigate using polarized light patterns, we could create backup navigation systems that are robust, inexpensive, and independent of satellite signals. So how do bees find their way home? They use a celestial compass that reads the sun's position even through clouds. They use a visual odometer that measures distance. By watching the world flow past their eyes, they create mental maps of their territory, with special attention to linear landmarks. They share directions with each other through a symbolic dance language, and they learn and improve with practice, building up experience that makes them ever more efficient navigators. All of this is packed into a brain smaller than a grain of rice. The honeybee's nervous system contains only about 1 million neurons compared to our roughly 86 billion. Yet, with this tiny brain, bees perform navigational feats that would challenge a human with maps, compasses, and GPS devices. So next time you see a bee on a flower, stop for a second. You're looking at one of the most sophisticated navigation systems in nature, and now you know its secrets.
We're used to thinking that the strength of the Spartans came from their muscles, their shields, and their brutal training. But what if I told you that one of the greatest secrets behind their endurance came from a tiny creature we usually see drifting from flower to flower? While other armies relied on heavy meals that slowed them down, the Spartans carried something very different, a kind of liquid gold that pushed their bodies far beyond normal human limits. Today, we'll uncover how bees helped shape the legend of the 300 Spartans, and why, without honey, the history of the world might have looked completely different. For Spartans, honey wasn't just sugar. Modern scientists call it a superfood, but to those iron-willed warriors, it was a matter of life and death. Before grueling marches across mountains, they consumed a blend of wild honey and pollen. Why? Because this was their natural power bank, a biological engine booster crafted not in a lab, but by nature itself. Honey delivered fast, explosive energy that didn't fade mid-battle, while pollen rebuilt their muscles faster than any enemy could recover. They weren't just eating something sweet. They were fueling their bodies with the most concentrated natural energy source the ancient world had ever known. But the story gets even more fascinating. Bees weren't only on Spartan tables. They were part of Spartan warfare. The Spartans were masters of psychological tactics, and they understood the wild mountains of Greece better than anyone. Imagine an enemy army attempting to push through a narrow rocky pass when suddenly a black cloud of furious mountain bees erupts from hidden hives. The Spartans knew exactly how to provoke a swarm at the perfect moment. While the terrified invaders fought blindly against stings and chaos, the warriors in red cloaks emerged from the cliffs to finish the job. It was, in many ways, the world's first example of biological border defense. And what does that teach us today? We look for strength in chemical supplements, energy drinks, and artificial enhancers. But the Spartans understood something deeper. Nature had already given them everything they needed. Their endurance came from harmony with their environment, from knowing which plants and which creatures could turn them into unstoppable forces. Maybe the next time you see a bee, you won't think of a sting. You'll think of a warrior whose path to greatness was shaped by the smallest ally imaginable. Now it's your turn, BeeVerse. Do you think a modern army could survive on the Spartan diet, powered by honey alone? Tell me in the comments, and let me know which other bee secret from history you want to hear next. And don't forget to like the video if honey is your favorite natural doping too.
You know how it is sometimes a single smell can transport you across decades faster than any time machine ever could. For me, that smell is a mixture of pine resin, wood smoke, beeswax, and sweet, golden honey. It's the smell of my grandfather's hands after a day in the apiary, the smell of summer in the Virginia foothills. Even now, 30 years later, that smell can stop me dead in my tracks, sending me hurtling back to 1992. My name is Ben Williams. This story takes place in Patrick County, Virginia, where the Blue Ridge Mountains roll gently into farmland, and where the people are as rooted in the soil as the ancient oaks that line the back roads. I was 8 years old that summer, an age where every day holds the promise of adventure, and adults seem like giants. My grandfather, James Akers Mize, though everyone called him Willis, was a giant in more ways than one. He stood over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders built by a lifetime of physical labor and a voice that could carry across a hayfield. But he wasn't just any giant. He was a war hero, though he would never have used those words himself. Grandpa Willis had enlisted in the army at 16 years old. 16, I think about that now, looking at my own children at that age. He lied about his age to fight the Nazis in Europe, to storm across battlefields that most Americans could barely locate on a map. He fought in the Battle of the Bulge, that frozen hell where thousands of young men died in the snow, and he came home with a Purple Heart and a missing right leg. The leg was replaced with a wooden prosthetic, the kind that creaked when he walked and that he'd sometimes take off at the end of the day. To me, as a child, that wooden leg was fascinating, a secret mechanical part of my grandfather that made him different. I didn't understand then what it cost him, what it meant to lose a piece of yourself in service to your country. I only knew that Grandpa walked with a rhythm, a step thump that I could hear from anywhere in the house. But here's the thing about my grandfather that I need you to understand. Despite being a decorated war hero, James Akers Mize was, with tremendous love and respect, one of the most accident-prone individuals to ever walk the earth. My grandmother, God rest her soul, used to say that Grandpa combined the bumbling grace of Inspector Clouseau with the slapstick timing of Mo Howard. If something could go wrong, it would go wrong around him. If there was a way to turn a simple task into a 3-act comedy of errors, he would find it. And if there was any possible method to transform a routine chore into a near-death experience requiring emergency intervention, well, Grandpa Willis was your man. This is important context for what I'm about to tell you. Our family farm sat on a couple hundred acres in Patrick County, land that had been in the family for generations. There were hayfields that turned golden in the summer, woods that stretched up into the mountains, and a creek where I caught crawdads. And scattered around the property, sitting on flat stones that Grandpa had hauled down from Johnny Mountain, were his beehives. These weren't modern hives with all the fancy equipment. They were simple white wooden boxes, the kind that looked like small chests of drawers for insects. Each had a hole at the bottom where the bees came and went on their mysterious errands. Grandpa kept maybe 30 hives in those days. He wasn't a commercial beekeeper. He didn't sell honey on any large scale. He kept bees because he loved them, because they connected him to something ancient and essential, because the hum of a healthy hive was, to him, the sound of the world working as it should. I loved watching the bees. I'd sit on the porch for hours, watching them zoom in and out of those little holes, their hind legs sometimes loaded with bright yellow pollen like they were carrying tiny saddlebags. The hum of the hive was a constant background music to my summers. The bees are talking, Grandpa would say when he saw me watching. They're telling each other where the good flowers are. You know how they do that? Well, I'd shake my head, and he'd launch into an explanation about the waggle dance, about how a scout bee returns to the hive and performs a complex choreography that tells the other bees exactly how far to fly and in what direction. He told me about Carl von Frisch, the scientist who won a Nobel Prize for decoding this dance, and I remember thinking that it was the most amazing thing. Bees with their own language, their own GPS system, all packed into a brain smaller than a grain of rice. They're smarter than people give them credit for. Grandpa would say a lot smarter. And they're gentle too. They don't want to sting you. Stinging kills them. You know, it's suicide for a bee to sting a mammal. Our skin is too thick, too elastic, the barb gets stuck, and when the bee flies away, she rips her own guts out trying to escape. This always horrified me as a child. The idea that a bee's only defense mechanism was fatal, that every sting was an act of self-sacrifice. Grandpa saw my face and would pat my shoulder with his big, calloused hand. That's why you never kill a bee if you can help it, he'd say. They're not trying to hurt you, they're just trying to protect their home. Respect that. It was good advice. Advice I would remember vividly after what happened that Saturday in late summer. The Saturday in question started like any other summer day. The sun rose over Johnny Mountain, burning off the mist that settled in the hollows overnight. I woke to the smell of bacon frying and coffee perking. My grandmother was already in the kitchen, moving with efficient grace. Grandpa was at the table, hunched over a plate of eggs. He was reading the Martinsville Bulletin, the local paper thrown onto the porch every morning. He looked up when I came in, his eyes crinkling. That meant he was about to propose an adventure. "Feeling brave today, boy?" he asked. I nodded vigorously, my mouth full of biscuit. "Good, I got something special planned." Grandma looked up from the stove, a spatula frozen midair. "Willis, what are you planning?" "Nothing dangerous, woman. Just gonna show the boys some wild bees." Grandma's eyes narrowed. This was a look she'd perfected over decades of marriage. It was a look that said, I know you, and I know this will end badly. Wild bees, she repeated flatly, up on the edge of the hayfield. Found a colony in a tall pine. Been watching him all month. Figure it's time to bring him home. Grandma sighed, a woman who had long ago accepted her fate. James Akers Mize, if you get this boy killed, I will never forgive you. We won't get killed. I got a plan. There it was. The phrase that should have sent me running for the hills. I got a plan from my grandfather was a harbinger of disaster. But I was 8. All I heard was adventure and wild bees and special plan. I was in after breakfast. Grandpa loaded his old baby blue Ford pickup with equipment. There was a brand new beehive, empty and waiting for occupants. There was his chainsaw, a beast of a machine with a bar almost as long as my arm. And there was a small smoker, though he didn't pack any fuel for it. I climbed into the cab of that pickup, the vinyl seats already hot from the morning sun. We bounced down the dirt track toward the hayfield. The truck smelled like gasoline, hay, and old tools. Grandpa drove with one hand on the wheel, occasionally waving at neighbors. The field was golden with late summer grass, ready for cutting. At its edge, where the cleared land gave way to woods, stood a tall, skinny pine tree. Near the top, clustered around a branch, was a dark mass. CM Grandpa asked, pointing. I squinted. Is that them? That's them. Wild honeybees. Been up there for months, I reckon. Time they moved into proper accommodations. He parked the truck at the edge of the field and we got out. The grass was tall enough to brush against my knees, wet with dew. Grandpa hauled the empty hive off the truck bed and carried it. Step thump. Step thump. He chose a spot at the base of the tree. Here's the plan, he said. We put the hive right here. Then I saw down the tree so it falls. He paused, squinting up at the tree, then back at the hive, then up at the tree again. So it falls right about here. He gestured vaguely. Right on top of the hive. Then the bees, they'll just pack their bags and move in. Easy as pie. Even at 8, I had my doubts. The hive looked small. The idea that being dropped 80 feet would make you want to settle down seemed unlikely. If someone dropped me from a mile up, I'd have other things on my mind. But Grandpa seemed confident, and he was a war hero who knew things. I kept my doubts to myself. Now here's the important part, he said, kneeling down to my level. When I start sawing, I want you to sit in the truck. Keep the windows up. If the bees get upset and I don't want you getting stung. I nodded. This seemed reasonable. The idea of being stung by a swarm of angry bees was not desirable. You stay put until I come get you, understand? Yes, sir. Good boy. I climbed back into the pickup and rolled up the windows, just like he said. The glass was already warm and the cab was heating up like an oven. But I didn't care. I had a front row seat to the greatest show on earth. Grandpa walked back to the tree, chainsaw in one hand. He set it down, positioned himself, and gave the starter cord a mighty pull. The saw coughed and died. He pulled again. Another cough. On the third pull, the engine roared to life, its high-pitched whine cutting through the quiet morning air. He raised the saw, pressed the bar against the trunk, and began to cut. And that's when things started to go wrong. There's a certain physics to cutting down a tree that experienced loggers understand intuitively. They can look at a trunk, assess its lean, gauge the wind, and predict where it will fall. My grandfather, for all his many talents, was not an experienced logger. The pine tree stood straight and tall, its trunk perpendicular to the ground. It should have been simple: cut a notch on the side you want it to fall, then cut from the opposite side slightly above the notch, and the tree will tip gracefully. Grandpa, as far as I could tell, simply started sawing into the trunk from whichever side he happened to be standing on. From my vantage point in the pickup, I watched as the chainsaw chewed through the wood. Sawdust flew in golden arcs, catching the sunlight. The tree began to tremble, the cluster of bees at its top swaying like a pendulum. The bees, I imagined, were probably not thrilled about this development. They'd chosen this tree as their home, spent months building comb, raising brood, storing honey, and now some man with a noisy machine was threatening to drop them 80 feet. I don't blame them for being upset. The tree leaned. For a moment it seemed to hang in the air, deciding its fate. Grandpa stepped back, still holding the running saw, watching his work, and then the tree made its choice. It fell in the complete opposite direction of the hive, landing with a tremendous thud that I could feel through the pickup's frame. The cluster of bees at the top, now the side of the tree, hit the ground hard, and for a moment everything was still. Then the cloud rose. Imagine a cloud of smoke, but instead of drifting lazily, it moves with purpose. It makes a sound, not just buzzing, but a deep, resonant hum that you feel in your chest. It's the sound of thousands of tiny wings beating in unison, and it is terrifying. The cloud hovered for a moment, as if orienting itself. Then, as if guided by a single mind, it turned and sped directly toward my grandfather. Now, my grandfather was a big man. He weighed probably 250, maybe more. And with his wooden leg, he was not built for speed. But when a cloud of angry bees is rocketing toward you, you find speed you didn't know you had. He vaulted over the fallen tree trunk with an agility that would have impressed an Olympic hurdler. His wooden leg cleared the log butt on the way down. It caught on a branch. The leg snagged, twisted, and detached from the harness that held it to a stump. Grandpa hit the ground hard. I watched, frozen in the pickup, as he began to crawl under the fallen tree. His wooden leg, still caught in the branch, dangled behind him. He crawled, waving one hand occasionally to swat at the cloud of bees. Bees began to bounce off the windshield of the pickup like sleet in a winter storm. Thump, thump, thump. Each impact left a small smear on the glass. I sat in that hot cab, my heart pounding, and thought, this ain't good. This ain't good at all. There's something you need to understand about honeybees. They're actually quite gentle creatures. They don't want to sting you. Stinging, as Grandpa had explained, is a suicide mission. When a honeybee stings a mammal, her barbed stinger gets stuck in the skin, and when she tries to fly away, she rips apart her own abdomen. They sting only as a last resort, when they feel their colony is threatened. This colony, I think it's fair to say, felt threatened. I watched my grandfather disappear under a living blanket of bees. They covered his back, his arms, his head. He kept crawling, kept moving toward the pickup, and I realized with horror that he was never going to make it. He was too far away, moving too slowly, and the bees were too many. And then, like a vision from heaven, I saw a flash of movement in the rearview mirror. Part 4. The Grandmother's Strategy. My grandmother was not a woman to be underestimated. She had spent 50 years married to the most accident-prone man in Patrick County. She had raised children, managed a household, kept a garden, preserved enough food to survive a nuclear winter, and developed a sixth sense for when her husband was about to do something spectacularly stupid. I learned later that she had been watching from the porch with a pair of binoculars. She'd seen us drive down to the hayfield. She'd seen the chainsaw, and she'd settled into her rocking chair with the binoculars and a cup of coffee, waiting for the inevitable. When she saw the tree fall the wrong way, she was already moving. Her car was an old Buick, the kind of boat-like vehicle that Detroit built in the 70s, with massive fins and a V8 engine that could probably outrun a police cruiser. She drove it like she'd stolen it, roaring down the dirt track in a cloud of dust. The engine roaring, gravel pinging off the undercarriage. She skidded to a stop between the pickup and the spot where Grandpa was still crawling through the grass, covered in bees. She got out of the car, and I watched in amazement as the bees ignored her. They swirled around her, flew past her face, landed on her arms, but they didn't sting. It was as if they didn't see her as a threat, or perhaps as if they respected her in a way they didn't respect Grandpa. My grandmother had always had a way with animals, with all living things. Really. She could calm a frightened horse, quiet a barking dog, coax a sick chicken back to health. She had, as someone once said, a St. Francis of Assisi-like relationship with the natural world. The natural world, in turn, seemed to love her back. She walked to where Grandpa lay, reached down, and helped him to his feet. She detached his wooden leg from the branch where it was caught, handed it to him, and began walking him toward the car. Bees still crawled on him, still stung him. I could see him flinching with each new assault, but they left her completely alone. She got him into the passenger seat, then walked back to the pickup, opened my door, and helped me out. I climbed into the back seat of the Buick, and she drove us home without a word. The whole rescue took maybe 3 minutes. 3 minutes from the time she arrived to the time we were driving back up the hill. But to me, watching from the back seat, it felt like an eternity. Grandpa sat in the front passenger seat, covered in welts. His face was already beginning to swell. His hands resting in his lap looked like they'd been attacked by 1,000 tiny needles. He didn't speak. He just stared straight ahead, occasionally wincing, as we drove back to the house. Grandma parked in the driveway, helped Grandpa inside, and sat him at the kitchen table. She went to the bathroom and came back with a bottle of something I don't know what. Some home remedy she kept for emergencies, and began dabbing it on his stings. I sat at the table across from him watching. His earlobes, I noticed, were swelling to the size of ping-pong balls. His neck was red and lumpy. His hands looked like bread dough. And through all of it, no one said a word about what had happened. That was the thing about my grandparents. They didn't belabor the obvious. There was no need for recriminations, no need for I told you so or what were you thinking. They both knew what had happened. They both knew it had gone wrong. And they both knew that talking about it wouldn't change anything. So we sat in silence. Grandpa ate the soup that Grandma put in front of him. I ate a sandwich. The clock on the wall ticked away the afternoon. And eventually, Grandpa's swelling began to go down, and the redness faded, and life returned to normal. But I never forgot what I learned that day. Grandpa Willis lived another 15 years after the bee-tastery of '92. He kept bees until the end, though he never again attempted to relocate a wild colony by cutting down their tree. Some lessons, apparently, stick. He died in 2007, at the age of 81. The funeral was held at the little Baptist church in town, and the sanctuary was packed with people whose lives he'd touched. Fellow veterans, neighbors, family, friends, people who remembered him as a war hero, as a farmer, as a husband and father and grandfather, people who had their own stories of his accident-prone ways, their own memories of watching disaster unfold in slow motion and somehow, miraculously not end in tragedy. I spoke at the funeral. I told the bee story. People laughed, the kind of laughter that comes when grief and love and memory mix together. Grandpa would have liked that, I think. He never took himself too seriously, never pretended to be anything other than what he was, a man who'd done extraordinary things and ordinary things, who'd been brave when it counted and ridiculous when it didn't, who'd loved his family and his bees and his mountains with equal devotion. After the funeral, I went out to the hives. They were still there, still humming with activity, still doing their ancient work of gathering nectar and raising brood. My uncle had taken over their care, keeping the tradition alive. I stood there for a long time, listening to that sound, that hum that had been the background music of my childhood, that had accompanied me through summers and autumns, that had witnessed Grandpa's triumphs and disasters with equanimity. Bees don't hold grudges, I thought. They don't remember that Grandpa tried to drop them from a tree. They only know the work, the endless, essential work of living. And I thought about what Grandpa had said all those years ago. They're gentle, they don't want to sting you. Even that day when they'd stung him hundreds of times, they weren't being malicious. They were being defensive. They were protecting their home, their family, their future. They were doing what any creature would do when threatened. I couldn't blame them for that. In the years that followed, I spent a lot of time thinking about that afternoon, about the bees, about my grandfather. I also learned more about bees from books, documentaries, and the internet that would arrive a few years later. And the more I learned, the more I realized my grandfather was right about the essential nature of these creatures. Honeybees are, in many ways, a model society. They operate on perfect cooperation, each working for the good of the colony. The queen doesn't rule, she's the reproductive engine, laying up to 2,000 eggs a day at the season's height. The workers, all female, do everything else: gather nectar, build comb, tend larvae, guard the hive, and protect their home. The drones, the males, have one job: mate with a virgin queen. Those that succeed die immediately. Those that don't are evicted from the hive in the fall, left to starve, seen as a drain on resources. It's harsh, but it works. The colony survives. I learned about the waggle dance, the incredible communication system Grandpa had told me about. A scout bee finds nectar, returns to the hive, and performs a complex choreography on the comb. The dance's angle indicates food direction relative to the sun. Duration shows distance. Intensity shows quality. Other bees follow her movements, translating them into flight instructions. They find the exact location, often miles away. It's symbolic communication scientists didn't fully understand until the 20th century, earning Carl von Frisch a Nobel Prize. Bees also navigate using polarized light, even when the sun is hidden. They detect its position. They have an internal clock that compensates for the sun's movement. A direction given at 9 a.m. still makes sense at 3 p.m. They remember landmarks, create mental maps, and can find their way home from miles away. All of this in a brain smaller than a grain of rice. The more I learned, the more I understood why Grandpa loved them. They were a window into a different kind of intelligence. They were also a reminder of what really matters: community cooperation, the slow and steady work of building something that will outlast you. A single bee produces only about 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in her entire lifetime. Think about that. An entire life, weeks of flying, thousands of flowers, miles of travel, and all she contributes is a few drops. But together, thousands of bees can produce pounds of honey, enough to sustain the colony through winter. There's a lesson in that, I think, about the value of individual effort, yes, but also about the power of collective work, about how small contributions, multiplied by many, become something substantial. As I grew older, I came to see that my grandfather was part of a long tradition of Appalachian beekeeping, a tradition that stretched back generations and connected people to the land in ways that modern life often severs. The mountains of Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Kentucky have been home to beekeepers for centuries. Early settlers brought bees with them, carrying hives in wagons as they moved westward. The bees thrived in mountain valleys. Beekeeping in Appalachia was never just about honey. It was about self-sufficiency. When sugar was expensive or unavailable, it was about medicine honey for coughs, propolis for wounds, pollen for allergies. It was about wax for candles. And it was about connection to place. A beekeeper learns the land in a particular way. Learns when the sourwood blooms, where the basswood grows, how weather affects nectar flow. They learn to read the landscape through the eyes of their bees, noticing details they might otherwise miss. I read books by Sue Hubbell, who wrote beautifully about her life as a beekeeper in the Missouri Ozarks. Her writing captured something I'd sensed in my grandfather: quiet wisdom from observation, from paying attention. I also discovered that Appalachian beekeeping has its own traditions and challenges. Melissa Bowden described how advice from books often doesn't apply locally. She found a mentor and joined a group. That's the Appalachian way: learning from those who came before, passing knowledge down through generations, adapting to local conditions rather than following generic formulas. My grandfather embodied that tradition, even in his bumbling way. He learned beekeeping from his father. The knowledge wasn't in books, it was in hands, in memory, in the stories told on porches on summer evenings. Why bees matter more than ever. In the years since Grandpa died, the world has changed in ways he would barely recognize. The internet arrived, then smartphones, then social media. The pace of life accelerated. The climate shifted, and the bees began to die. Colony collapse disorder emerged in the mid-2000s, a mysterious phenomenon in which worker bees abandoned their hives, leaving behind the queen, the brood, and plenty of food. Scientists pointed to pesticides, parasites, habitat loss, and climate change. The numbers were staggering. Beekeepers lost 30, 40, 50% of their colonies over winter. Commercial pollinators struggled to meet the demands of almond growers in California, apple growers in Washington, blueberry growers in Maine. The alarm spread. People understood bees aren't just honey producers, they're essential pollinators for a huge portion of our food supply. Almonds, apples, avocados, blueberries, cherries, cucumbers, melons, squash, strawberries all depend on bee pollination. Without bees, our diets would become dramatically less varied, less nutritious, less interesting. Some scientists estimate that if bees disappeared, humans would have only a few years of food left. It's a dire prediction, underscoring how dependent we are on these tiny creatures that most of us barely notice. Grandpa wouldn't have been surprised by any of this. He understood, in his bones, that bees matter. He understood that they're not just a source of honey, they're a keystone species, a linchpin in the complex machinery of agriculture. He understood that taking care of bees means taking care of the world they live in, which means taking care of the world we all share. He also understood something more subtle, that paying attention to bees teaches you to pay attention to everything. To notice when flowers bloom, when weather patterns shift, when the natural world is in balance or out of it. Bees are indicators, sentinels, messengers from a realm we too often ignore. Part 9. Lessons from the hive. What did I learn from my grandfather and his bees? What lessons have stayed with me across the decades? First, gentleness is not weakness. Honeybees are among the gentlest creatures yet effective defenders of their home. They don't attack unprovoked or seek conflict, but when threatened, they respond. They give everything they have, even at the cost of their own lives, to protect their colony. Second, cooperation is essential. No bee can survive alone. A solitary bee separated from its colony will die within days. But together, thousands of bees create a superorganism that thrives and adapts. Third, small contributions add up. One wealth of a teaspoon of honey seems insignificant, but multiplied by 60,000 bees, it becomes pounds of honey, enough to feed a colony through winter and provide for the next generation. Fourth, the natural world operates on scales we barely comprehend. The waggle dance, polarized light vision, the intricate chemistry of honey, these are things we're only beginning to understand. So much to learn by paying attention. Fifth, family is everything. My grandfather wasn't a perfect man. He was accident-prone, sometimes foolish, occasionally ridiculous, but he loved his family with an intensity that matched anything he'd felt. He taught me what it means to be present, to share knowledge, to create lasting memories. Sixth, failure is part of learning. The Beetastrophe of '92 was a spectacular failure, but it was a memorable story, told and retold, a lesson that stuck. Grandpa didn't succeed in relocating that wild colony, but he gave me a story I'll carry forever. Seventh, we're all connected. The bees need the flowers need the bees, the farmers need both, and we need all of them. Pull one thread, and the whole tapestry begins to unravel. I'm sitting on the porch of the old farmhouse, which I inherited after my grandmother passed. The house has been updated, new windows, new roof, new plumbing, but the bones are the same. The same porch where I sat as a child, watching bees, the same view of Johnny Mountain, hazy in the distance, the same sounds of evening settling in. And in the backyard, in the same spot where Grandpa kept his hives, there are bees again. I started keeping them 3 years ago. It felt like coming home. I called my uncle, who still keeps bees on his own place, and asked for advice. He gave me the same advice Grandpa would have given. Find a mentor, start small, pay attention. I found a local beekeeping association, attended meetings, read books, watched videos. I bought 2 small starter colonies and installed them in new hives, and I began the slow process of learning, the same process Grandpa had gone through 60 years earlier. The bees have taught me things I didn't expect. They've taught me patience. You can't rush a colony, can't force them to produce more honey or raise more brood. They've taught me observation, the subtle signs of health or disease, the way the hive's mood shifts with weather and season. They've taught me humility. No matter how much you know, the bees know more. This evening, I'm sitting on the porch with a glass of iced tea, watching the bees come home. They're returning from their foraging trips, their hind legs loaded with pollen, bright yellow, orange, white. They circle the hive entrance, orienting themselves, then dive in. The hum of the hive is a steady, comforting sound. I think about Grandpa, about his wooden leg, his war stories, his disastrous plans, about the way he loved these mountains, this farm, this family, about the lessons he passed down, whether he meant to or not. And I think about that day in 1992 when a tall pine tree fell the wrong way, when a cloud of angry bees descended on my grandfather, when my grandmother drove down the hill like a bat out of hell to save us all. It was terrifying at the time, but it's become something else now, a family legend, a bonding story. A reminder that even our worst moments can become our most cherished memories. The bees are quieting now, settling in for the night. The sun has set behind Johnny Mountain, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The evening air is cool and sweet with the smell of hay and honeysuckle. I raise my glass in a silent toast to Grandpa, to Grandma, to the bees, to all of it, to the lessons that sting and the memories that sweeten with time, to the understanding that we're all part of something larger, something that stretches back generations and forward into an unknown future. And I smile, thinking of what Grandpa would say if he could see me now, sitting on his porch, watching his bees, carrying on his tradition. He'd probably say, "Took you long enough, boy," and he'd be right. Epilogue: How to keep bees without cutting down trees. For those inspired to try beekeeping, let me offer practical advice. Learn from Grandpa's mistakes and my own trial and error. Start with a mentor. Beekeeping looks simple, but it's not. Many things can go wrong, from pests to starvation. An experienced guide is invaluable. Start small. 2 hives are ideal. Enough to compare, not overwhelming. You'll learn more, and mistakes will be less costly. Learn your local conditions. Beekeeping varies by region. Nectar flows, forage, pests all differ. Local associations are the best source. Wear protective gear until comfortable, no shame in a full bee suit. Experienced beekeepers build skill. Take your time. Respect the bees. They are wild creatures, not pets. Treat them well for honey and pollination. Treat them poorly, they'll leave or sting. Don't cut down trees with wild colonies. Call a professional for live removals. They relocate safely, without mass casualties. Read good books. Sue Hubbell's A Book of Bees in a Country Year are excellent. Beautifully written, full of wisdom, not just how-to manuals. Join a community. Beekeeping can be solitary, but it doesn't have to be. Local associations and forums connect you with shared interests. Pay attention. The best beekeepers are the best observers. They notice when something's off. When bees behave strangely or brood patterns are irregular, they respond to what they see. Be patient. Bees work on their own schedule. You can't rush them to produce more honey or raise more brood. The best you can do is provide good conditions and let them do what they do. Remember why you're doing this, whether for honey, pollination, connection to nature, or just loving watching bees. Keep that reason in mind. It'll sustain you. My grandfather kept bees for 60 years, through war and peace, triumph and disaster. He kept them because he loved them, because they connected him to something essential. I keep them for the same reasons. And every time I open a hive, every time I watch bees return with loaded pollen baskets, every time I taste honey straight from the comb, I think of him, of his wooden leg, his crazy plans, his unwavering love for these mountains and these creatures. The bees don't remember him, of course, but I do. And as long as I keep bees, as long as I tell his stories, a part of him lives on. That's the thing about legacy. It's not about monuments or memorials. It's about the small things we pass on. A love of the land, a respect for creatures, a willingness to laugh at our own mistakes. It's about sitting on a porch at dusk, watching bees come home, and feeling connected to everyone who sat there before. Grandpa would understand that. He'd probably just add, "And don't cut down any damn trees." I won't, Grandpa, I promise.